Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we have an Old World Development Diary update, and this is a pretty big one because this is giving us a really good look at some of the rules changes and rules that we're bringing to Warhammer. The Old World, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, Warhammer whatever you want to call it. And so, let's get having a look through this article. We're going to talk about everything that came out in this, and I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this as well. Today's video is brought to you by Gap Games, a fantastic retailer in Australia for a variety of different miniature war games. If you'd like to help support the channel, we have an affiliate link where by clicking on and purchasing, you'll help support the channel, but you'll also help support Gap Games, which is a fantastic servant to the community. Let's get having a look through this article. We're going to talk about everything that came out in this, and I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on this as well. So, first of all, when we embarked upon the daunting task of designing Warhammer the Old World, we wanted to create a modern game that would be in the mold of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Now, a reimagining of the classic tabletop war game that would appeal to both veterans of the Old World and newcomers to this most venerable of fantasy realms alike. With this in mind, we set about playing lots of games. So the first thing I want to point out is the nice cool base sizes. I think you can see most of these are going to be 25mm bases on a lot of units now. We have bases for war machines, though not on the Anvil of Doom there, so everything except the Anvil of Doom is on a base. And I actually have 2 out of the 3 characters in the front here. I've also got that engineer at the back there as well. This Dwarf Lord, though, with his axe on the beard like this, his beard on the axe, not axe on the beard, is probably one of my favourite miniatures that came out for the dwarves in Warhammer Fantasy. So, for several months, the diviners regularly assembled to play games of every edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, reminding ourselves of the rules that in some cases we hadn't played for decades. We wanted to identify which parts of the classic game we enjoyed the most and which parts we felt could be improved upon. And here are some of the tweaks we've made to the rules. Now, I think this is really important. I think, you know, the best part of the edition will be the fact that we've got all this information to look back on for 8 editions of Warhammer Fantasy, and I do hope as well that they have taken a look at things like 9th Age, things like Warhammer Fantasy Battle, Warhammer Armies Project, Warhammer 9th Edition, all of those sort of Warhammer Fantasy things, and indeed I hope they looked at competitors' games as well. Things like Kings of War, Song of Ice and Fire, Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings that are, you know, the modern rank and flank games, and took a look at all of it, because I think taking all that information is really important. I will say, like, one thing, like, I loved Fantasy Battle as a game back in the day, but I definitely think how we have seen modern rank and flank style games work has been a big improvement to the overall systems, and I hope we can see some things that have been modernized and learnt from the evolution of those types of games over the years. And so the first one here is drawing the battle lines. Warhammer the Old World is a game of massed combat, large armies formed into regimented units that advance with grim intent towards the foe. These rules encourage players to field units of varying size based on their type and role. Perhaps most importantly, the formations units adopt how wide or deep they are is just as significant as where they are deployed and how quickly they advance. The rules encourage units with wide frontages, but the ideal number of models per rank is decided by the player, not enforced by the rules. To do this, we've ensured as many models as possible can fight in combat, giving even those models that are within the fighting rank but not in base contact with the enemy the opportunity to bring their weapons to bear. Combined with the freedom to create and arm characters you choose from a wide range of options, players have a lot of strategic choices to make when building their units and writing their muster lists, choices that will in turn inform their tactics on the battlefield. And so, there's an interesting part here. You've ensured as many models as possible can fight in combat, giving even models that are within the fighting rank, so they do say rank in this, so maybe we are not going to see multiple ranks fighting to be a thing. But not in base contact with the enemy. So, you know, maybe your entire front frontage is going to get to fight. This is interesting. I think it gives some information without sort of clearly stating what it's doing on this one. Breaking the enemy. One thing we're keen for Warhammer the Old World to represent was the push and pull of battle, capturing the way in which a hard-pressed army will gradually succumb to fatigue and attrition. To achieve this, units that lose a round of combat will often give ground reluctantly rather than immediately breaking and fleeing, while the winner can press their advantage. Players will quickly learn, however, that a cunning enemy will use the push and pull of battling units to lay traps, and an advancing unit runs the risk of exposing a vulnerable flank. I think this is an interesting one because this is something they've obviously in the latest edition of Warhammer 40k, with Battle Shock changing from models being removed from your units, we've seen this sort of change on how they want it. They don't want to remove models at the end of combat. They want to have these things be, negatively affected still. So like in modern 40k, if you haven't seen that, you lose the ability to have stratagems and count as objective scoring on the tabletop with that. And so I think this push and pull could be really interesting. You're able to say move 4 inches, push a unit 4 inches back or something like that. Could be really interesting on how the battle sort of ebbs and flows, and do you overexpose yourself? Do you now disengage from combat? I think this has a lot of opportunity to be a really cool and interesting part of a game. I'm trying to think of the game I'm thinking of where you can do pushing models back. Sorry, this is Middle Earth. This is where I'm remembering it from. Middle Earth, this is something that happens where you can actually push models back an inch. And this can be, pushing them off edges of cliffs in some cases in Middle Earth. But it also means, you can push models back into other friendly models that are fighting with you, other friendly units' paths, but also you can also heavily expose yourself if you begin to follow up with all of these things, and all of a sudden your fighter is now stuck in the middle of enemy lines. Obviously this is on a very different scale, but I do feel a bit of that push and pull that Middle Earth has here. That could be really quite fun. And so the power of magic is the other big one. This, of course, over the editions, especially the later editions of fantasy, became a really powerful thing. Now, magic is integral to the game. Though the mechanics of its use are simple, the untutored wizards of the old world practice strange laws of magic of their own devising, manipulating the winds of magic and crafting spells that suit their purpose. While such reckless might alarm some, it gives wizards freedom to cast a wide range of spells with ease. To reflect this, spellcasting has been liberated and spread throughout the different phases of the game, rather than restricted to just one. In doing so, we've ensured that every spell available to a wizard can have a significant impact upon the battle if cast in the right place and at the right time. Situations where a single spell can decide the outcome of the battle are very rare. The focus has shifted from keeping track of dice pools or hands of cards onto the positioning of wizards. This means that players will have to plan ahead, moving their wizards as carefully as any other unit, both to ensure they can bring their magic to the right place at the right time, and to ensure they can counter the spells of enemy wizards. And this very much sounds like modern 40k to me, where we've seen, magic move into the other phases. It necessarily be effects that have, the potential to be magic. Obviously, we've got a bit of counter in this, which is different to how 40k and its psychic powers are working. But I think this is a positive change. 8th edition, even 7th edition, and sometimes even 6th, had the part where you had these mega spells that could really become devastating things in the game. And so I'm sort of glad to see that go. I don't want to see my block of 40 troops I spent 100 hours painting removed by one wizard you painted last night. I think this is a positive change. I think you can really create some interesting things to having magic activate in different phases. Having the movement spells activate in the movement phase, having combat spells that activate in combat phase. This can make things easy to remember as well when you're doing them, because you can go this sort of before phase thing and do the magic that activates in that phase. Stops you going, what spells did I cast? Obviously you can mark that with tokens and stuff, but I think this is a positive overall change. Final thoughts though, these are exciting game mechanics and many more besides, combined with classic elements of a beloved game, give players both old and new plenty to consider when planning their armies and mastering their tactics. It's an exciting time when we're really looking forward to seeing the serried ranks of fantasy armies marching across gaming tables once more. So this is interesting. I think overall I've seen some positive changes. I really like the idea of the breaking enemy, and I hope it is working in some way. I'm imagining it. They gave a lot of information in the first two without truly explaining, where I think the magic one, they were pretty sort of explicit on how it's working, without giving too much detail. We're going to have magic in the different phases of the game now. And so just having a look what we're seeing, we've got some high elves here, we got orcs and goblins. You know what's really cool with those orcs and goblins here that I'll say? I like that they got the old stone trolls. Do wonder. And then we've got a bunch of the Empire troops, which have actually just been announced. A bunch of them are being discontinued from Age of Sigmar, the Demigryph Knights, which are on quite substantial bases now. Great swords, handgunners, halberdiers, all of that. That's all been discontinued. We've also got the mortar up the back there, which is cool. We got the amazing Goblin Doom Diver Catapult. Classic Orcs and Goblins miniatures, War Altar of Sigmar there. And then we've got High Elves again with a bunch of cool models. More Orcs and Goblins here. I'm trying to look at base sizes too. I don't know whether it looks like they've expanded the cavalry base sizes. We can't really tell whether they're using the old or the new base sizes in this. It does look like they're using the old ones because that looks like the 20mm base that the Lawseeker used to come with. But we then see High Elves again here, so lots of High Elves in this. Maybe they might have a bunch of High Elves running around the studio. And a bunch of Dwarves. I have a Dwarf army that I'm going to be painting very soon. And we'll probably get a couple of Warhammer Fantasy Battle games on the channel. With that, I've got Wood Elves as well. We're obviously going to have an Empire army now because of all my Cities of Sigmar troops now being transferred over that. I'm going to build a Dark Elf force as well, and we've got some Skaven that we'll probably add as along with maybe some Beastmen as well. Who knows? But let us know your thoughts on everything we've seen from all of this for Warhammer the Old World. I'd love to hear from everyone on what you think of all of this. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And so, thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and also drop a comment down below letting us know what you thought about the video. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our fun little community, we have a Discord server which is linked down in the video's description, and also linked down in the video's description are the best ways to help support the channel, either by Patreon or YouTube members, or by grabbing yourself some merch from our Teespring store as well. All of those are linked down in the video's description, and a special thank you to our YouTube members and patrons. We'd like to give you all a shout out, so thank you to our YouTube members John Castle, Disco, James Tillman, Monty's Tabletop Terrain, Ariana Edwards, Broken Chef, the Johnny84, Loch Lorick, Ronya, Green Roots Gaming, and our patrons Wasaren, Kenny Lyle, Outer and Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Cure Dynamic, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, Benjamin Swallows, Red Martin, Iron Grinch, Colorblind Magic, Grimscold, and Andy C. Thank you all once again, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.